Search every Ibeni home and kill all the male children, infants, toddlers, teens, kill them all.
Then the frogs came in their thousands. They hopped from the riverbanks into the homes of both the poor and noble. They jumped into stew pots, under beds, onto sleeping children. Then they landed on the king's shoulder during the meeting with his chiefs. He leapt to his feet with a scream. In the heart of the ancient kingdom of Oguta, where the sacred river Olu shimmered like a silver snake under the sun, ruled by a man whose name echoed with dread across every valley and hill. His name, Firawn. He was no ordinary king. He wore a crown made of 7 iron rings and sat upon a throne carved from the bones of elephants. His laughter was thunder and his anger was lightning. Even the bravest warriors trembled when they heard his footsteps. Firawn was feared, yes, but he wanted more. He wanted worship.
I am the child of thunder.
He bellowed from the great stone palace one market day.
I command the rain. I own the earth. There is no God in this land but me.
The people dared not challenge him. His guards, the Ogunjis, roamed the streets in red and black war paint, flogging anyone who even whispered the name of Olodumare, the true creator. All prayers were redirected to the king. In temples, Firawn's face was carved in stone. In the squares, praise singers sang his name. Offerings were made in his honor. Slowly, fear replaced faith. But far above the city, beyond the sacred grove of the Iroko tree, lived a woman untouched by the king's madness. Her name was Eje, the ancient prophetess. Her hair was white like cowrie shells, and her eyes had seen visions that men could not bear. One rainy night, she emerged from the cave and called the elders of the land. The spirits have spoken, she announced, her voice trembling like rustling leaves. A child will rise from the Ibeni tribe. He will not fear Firawn. He is the one chosen by Olodumare to bring down the king. Fear gripped the elders' hearts. The Ibeni people were slaves, conquered long ago and forced to work the fields, the forges, and the palaces. They had no weapons, no rights, and no freedom. But now, a prophecy hung over Oguta like a dark cloud. The message spread like wildfire among the Ibeni, the enslaved people of Oguta. Quietly, in their huts and farms, they rejoiced. Many wept with joy, believing that at last, Olodumare had heard their cries. Songs of hope were whispered during the night. Mothers held their babies tighter. Fathers stared into the stars with renewed strength. But the elders of the Ibeni tribe did not rejoice out loud. They had lived long enough to know the cruelty of the Oba. They knew that if he even suspected a prophecy like this, blood would flow in the streets. So they buried the prophecy deep in silence and warned their people.
Rejoice in your hearts, but let your lips be still.
Then, one night, under the watchful eyes of the stars, an Ibeni woman gave birth in secret. Her name was Nola. When she looked upon the newborn, her breath caught in her throat. There was something different about him. His skin shimmered like moonlight, and his eyes glowed like warm embers. That night, Firawn tossed restlessly on his royal bed, sweat glistening on his brow despite the cool breeze that crept through the palace windows. Shadows danced on the walls, and the air grew heavy. Too heavy. Suddenly, the silence shattered. He heard shouts, cries, and the distant pounding of war drums. Jolting upright, he rushed to the balcony. His eyes widened in terror. Oguta was burning. Flames rose high into the sky, devouring rooftops and swallowing streets. His soldiers ran in every direction, screaming. Smoke curled into the heavens like the fingers of angry spirits. Fear gripped Kafurami like a cold hand on his throat. Then he saw something that froze his soul. The fire spared only one place, the Ibeni quarters. Their clay home stood untouched, bathed in a strange golden glow. The people, those he had enslaved, stood unharmed, watching silently from the shadows. Before he could make sense of it, a cold hand shoved him from behind. Kafurami stumbled. He screamed as he fell down into a lake of fire. The heat seared his skin. The flames swallowed his crown. His screams echoed endlessly. Then suddenly, he jolted awake, gasping. The room was still, but the stench of smoke lingered in his nostrils, and the image of the Ibeni homes glowing in divine protection haunted him like a curse. Disturbed, Kafurami summoned the seers and diviners. Their interpretation made his blood run cold.
A child from the Ibeni will rise and overthrow you.
The chief seer said.
He is the answer to the cries of the oppressed.
In his fury, Kafurami ordered a kingdom-wide decree.
Search every Ibeni home and kill all the male children, infants, toddlers, teens. Kill them all. Leave only their daughters alive.
Immediately, the Ogunji stormed out of the palace with swords and torches, and dread returned. The moon hung low that night, heavy and red, like a warning in the sky. The village lay silent, wrapped in the stillness of sleep. But beyond the trees, creeping like shadows through the undergrowth, came the Ogunjis, Kafurami's ruthless soldiers. Their spears glinted in the moonlight, and their faces were painted with black ash and palm oil. They moved in silence, like death itself. They had come for blood. With a loud war cry, they surrounded the village. The first house door was kicked down, then the next. One by one, homes were invaded. Mothers screamed, fathers fought in vain, and innocent babies were dragged from one mat and silenced forever. Nola was still awake when she heard the screams. Her eyes widened in horror as she peeked through the crack in her wall and saw the Ogunjis moving like beasts from house to house. Then, her door burst open with a loud creak. The midwife, sweating and panting, staggered in. "Nola," she gasped, her voice trembling. "Ogunji don't enter Ibeni o. Then they kill man pikin." Nola's heart skipped. Without a second thought, she tore the raffia mat from the wall, revealing the back exit of her mud hut. Clutching her baby tightly, she crept out through the narrow opening into the dark to the back of her hut. Without shoes or wrapper, Nola ran barefoot into the forest behind the village, guided only by the whisper of leaves and her pounding heartbeat. Thorns caught her feet, branches scraped her arms, but she didn't stop. She ran until she got to the great river Olu. Nola paused and looked around, lost, confused, unsure of what to do. Her hands trembled as she clutched her baby to her chest. Then, as if placed there by fate, her eyes caught sight of a large empty calabash resting by a patch of tall reeds. It was as though the river itself had left her a gift. Without thinking twice, Nola grabbed it. She knelt by the river bank, stuffed some leaves into the bottom to cushion it, then tore a strip from her cloth. With tears in her eyes, she wrapped her baby snugly in the cloth. She kissed his warm forehead and whispered, "Forgive me, my son." Gently, she placed him into the calabash and steadied it on the surface of the water. Then she knelt and prayed, "Olodumare, if truly this child is yours, save him. Let the river carry him to safety. Let him live. Let him fulfill your will." Then, without looking back, she pushed the calabash into the river. Unbeknownst to Nola, her first daughter Rama had followed her silently through the night, hiding behind a tree just a few feet away, wide-eyed and silent. The little girl watched as her mother let the river carry her baby brother away, his tiny body floating into the unknown. The waters parted gently as if recognizing the divine task they had been given. The calabash floated away, carrying the destiny of a people and the downfall of a king. The sun had barely risen over the kingdom of Oguta when the royal gardens beside River Olu glistened with morning dew. Birds chirped softly from the trees, and mist curled over the river's calm surface like a whisper from the gods. Queen Asioma, the youngest of Oba Ferami's wives, often walked by the river in the early hours. Unlike the other queens, she did not care much for gold or praise singers. She found peace in the rustle of leaves, the hum of waters, and the silence of dawn. Queen Asioma still believed in Olodumare, though she never said it aloud, not even to her maids. She would often whisper silent prayers beneath her breath. Her mother had once told her, "Kings may wear crowns, but only Olodumare wears the sky." That morning, as she stood near the water's edge, something caught her eye. A calabash, smooth, round, and glistening, drifted slowly towards the bank. It did not tumble with the current as normal things do. It glided steady and sure, as if being guided by unseen hands. Curious and drawn by a strange tug in her spirit, Asioma waded slightly into the river, her long wrapper soaked as she reached for the floating calabash. With trembling hands, she pulled it toward her. The moment she touched it, she gasped. Inside lay a baby boy, calm, sleeping, his tiny fists curled near his glowing face. His skin shimmered softly, and a warm breeze swept over the riverbank. Her heart tightened. "This child, he is not ordinary," she whispered. The queen pressed the child to her chest and held him close. Her eyes welled with tears she didn't fully understand. It felt like love, yes, but it also felt like prophecy. She hurried back to the palace, hiding the calabash under her shawl. Later that day, Queen Asioma stood before Oba Ferami in the great hall of stone. The Oba, seated on his lion-carved throne, wore a robe of red feathers and leopard skin. His face was stern, his eyes sharp. She bowed and spoke gently. "My king, today the river delivered a child into my arms, a beautiful boy with light in his face. Let us keep him. He will be like a son to us." Oba Ferami narrowed his eyes.
A boy? From the river? From where?
"I do not know, my king," she replied calmly, "but my heart tells me he is a blessing. Let us not harm him, please. Perhaps he will serve us well in the future." Oba Ferami studied her for a long moment. A hush fell over the court. Then he waved his hand.
"Do with him as you please."
He muttered.
"But he is your responsibility, not mine."
Queen Asioma exhaled slowly. She had done it. The boy would live. She named him Ibeto, not knowing she had just welcomed into the palace the same child her husband had sworn to destroy. But shortly after, trouble began. Ibeto refused to feed from any of the palace's wet nurses. They brought him to one woman after another, young, old, noble, but the boy cried and turned his head from them all. The palace grew restless. "This child is cursed," some whispered. "He has rejected every breast." But Asioma, troubled and desperate, prayed silently, "Olodumare, what do you want me to do?" Then, just as the sun began to set, a young girl from the Ibeni quarters, Rama, came forward, her eyes wide with a quiet boldness. "I know a woman whose milk brings peace to any child. Perhaps the baby will accept her," she said softly. It was a risk, but Asioma agreed. The woman was brought in. She held Ibeto close, whispered something only a mother would say, and the boy latched on immediately. He sucked quietly, he sighed, and he slept. Unbeknownst to anyone in the palace, that woman was Nola, his real mother. King Ferami, suspicious, asked, "Are you not the mother of this child?" To protect her identity, Nola smiled and said, "Children always love me. Maybe it's my saint." The king bought the lie, and the Oba's court gave her a salary in gratitude. And so, by the power of Olodumare, Ibeto's mother was allowed to nurse and raise him right inside the palace walls of the man who wanted him dead. Ibeto grew within the walls of Kafurami's palace, surrounded by luxury, gold, and armed guards. Yet, no matter how royal the palace looked, the spirit of the boy remained different. He was thoughtful, observant, and bold for his age. Though fed and clothed like royalty, Ibeto never bowed to the carved image of Kafurami, unlike the other children in the palace. While others sang praises to the king, Ibeto often stared in silence. "Why do people call the Oba God?" he once asked a servant. "Does it bring rain? Did he create the trees?" The servant shushed him in fear, but the question echoed. Chief Hemba, the king's high priest, watched Ibeto closely. The boy's steady gaze unsettled him.
"There is fire in that child's eyes,"
he told the Oba.
"He does not worship you. He's not like the others."
Kafurami waved him off.
"He's just a child, harmless."
But the unease spread. One day, during a palace gathering, Kafurami lifted little Ibeto in his arms before the chiefs. The boy looked at the king, frowned, and suddenly grabbed the Oba's beard, then slapped him across the cheek. The whole froze. Gasps filled the air. The guard stepped forward, waiting for a command.
"This is the child,
The Oba muttered darkly.
the one from the prophecy."
But Queen Asioma rushed forward, falling to her knees. "My king, he is only a child. He doesn't know what he's doing. If you doubt, test him." The Oba, still burning with anger, agreed.
"Bring 2 bowls."
He ordered. One bowl was filled with glimmering gems, the other with hot burning coals.
"If he reaches for the treasure,"
The Oba declared,
"he is wise and dangerous. But if he touches fire, then he is but a fool."
The balls were placed before Ibeto. The child toddled forward and reached for the shining jewels. But just before his fingers touched them, an unseen force nudged his hand. Ibeto turned and grabbed a burning coal instead. A scream filled the hole as he instinctively put it in his mouth. His tongue burned, and Queen Asioma ran to carry him, her heart breaking. From that day, Ibeto developed a slight speech defect, but his soul remained strong. Kafurami laughed.
"Look at him now, weak. He'll bring nothing."
But he was wrong. Olodumare was not raising a prince to sit on gold. He was shaping a messenger to shake the earth. Years passed. Ibeto grew into a young man, tall, broad-shouldered, and strong. Though he lived among royals, his heart remained with the oppressed Ibeni people. He would often sneak into their quarters, help lift baskets, share stories, and listen to their silent suffering. One day, while walking through the Oguta marketplace, Ibeto heard shouting. He rushed toward the noise and saw an Ogunji, one of Kafurami's warriors, brutally beating an old Ibeni man named Samiru.
"Leave him alone!"
Ibeto shouted, but the guard struck again. In a moment of anger and defense, Ibeto pushed the guard, intending only to stop him. But the guard stumbled, hit his head on a stone, and died instantly. Ibeto froze. He hadn't meant to kill him. His hands trembled, his heart pounded, and he fled. That night, Ibeto prayed in secret.
"Oh, Olodumare, I didn't mean to kill him. Please forgive me. I was only trying to help."
But news had already reached the palace. Kafurami's council demanded justice. The next day, as Ibeto tried to slip quietly through the market, he saw Samiru again, this time fighting another Ogunji. As Ibeto approached, Samiru cried out,
"Are you going to kill me like you killed the last one?"
The words echoed through the crowd. Fear swept over Ibeto. His secret was out. Suddenly, a palace informant rushed to him and whispered urgently. Without looking back, Ibeto ran into the wild hills of Oguta, leaving behind the palace, his mother, and everything he knew. Deep in the hills of Oguta, Ibeto wandered alone, tired, dusty, and haunted. He had left behind the palace that raised him and the mother who loved him. With only a water god and a heart full of guilt, one afternoon, while resting near Mount Nsioka, he saw something strange. a flame burning in the heart of a thorn bush, yet the bush was not consumed. Ibeto stepped closer, eyes wide. Then came a voice, clear, powerful, echoing through the rocks. Ibeto! He froze. I am Olodumare, the Lord of all kingdoms. Remove your sandals. You are on a sacred ground. Ibeto fell to his knees, trembling. The voice continued, I have seen the pain of the Ibeni. I have heard their cries, and I have chosen you to return to Oguta, to speak to Kafurami. Tell him to let my people go. Ibeto hesitated.
Me? My tongue is slow, and they won't believe me.
But Olodumare replied, I will be with you. With that, the fire faded. Ibeto stood no longer as a fugitive, but the messenger of the Most High. With dust in his feet and fire in his soul, Ibeto descended the sacred hills and returned to the land he had once fled. The people of Aguta watched him in silence, unsure whether to fear or hope. Ibeto walked straight to the gate of the palace and demanded to see Kafurami. Inside the great hall, the Oba sat high on his throne, draped in leopard skin, surrounded by chiefs and guards. His eyes narrowed as he recognized the boy from the river, now a man. Ibeto spoke boldly.
Kafurami, Olodumare says, let the people of Ibeni go.
The hall erupted in murmurs. The Oba laughed coldly.
You, the runaway murderer? Do you think a bush god can command me?
Ibeto answered,
I did wrong and fled, but Olodumare has called me. I come not in my name, but in his.
Kafurami slammed his staff.
You dare challenge me in my court?
But Ibeto stood firm, and so the battle between a proud king and a prophet chosen by the heavens began, not with swords, but with truth and power. The court of Kafurami was tense. Chiefs leaned forward, gods tightened their grip on spears.
I'm sent by Olodumare.
Ibeto said again, raising his staff.
And I bring a sign.
At Olodumare's command, Ibeto dropped his staff. Before their eyes, it slithered into a massive serpent, its eyes glowing, its tongue hissing across the polished floor. Gasps filled the room. Kafurami recoiled in shock, but quickly masked his fears.
Bring in the sorceress!
He shouted, and in no time, the palace magicians arrived with chants and charms. They threw down their own staffs, which turned into snakes. Then, Ibeto's serpents lunged and swallowed every one of theirs whole. The court fell silent. Kafurami's face darkened. The truth was clear, but pride would not let him bend. Kafurami refused to let the Ibeni people go. His heart hardened, and his pride grew. So, Olodumare responded with signs. First came the blood. River Olu, once clean and sacred, turned thick and red. Fish floated to the surface. Pots filled with blood instead of water. People cried out, but the Oba raised his wine cup and laughed.
Is this all your God can do?
Then the frogs came in their thousands. They hopped from the riverbanks into the homes of both poor and noble. They jumped into stew pots, under beds, onto sleeping children. The palace was worst of all. Frogs croaked from Kafurami's throne, scattered over his fists, and even landed on his shoulder during a meeting with his chiefs. He leapt to his feet in fury.
Get them out of my palace!
He roared. Guards swung brooms. Fires were lit. Charms were chanted, but nothing worked. Out of frustration, the Oba summoned Ibeto.
Beg your God to make them go away. I will release the Ibeni if he does.
Ibeto prayed, and by dawn, the frogs were gone. But the king broke his word.
It was luck,
He said with a sneer.
no shaking.
Then came the flies. Black clouds of them swarmed the land. They buzzed in ears, clung to skin, and laid eggs in food. Men fainted from the stench. Goats panicked and rammed walls. Merchants abandoned the markets. Inside the palace, the flies were relentless. Kafurami could not eat, sleep, or even speak without spitting them out.
This is witchcraft!
He shouted, slamming his royal staff.
Where are my diviners? The priests! Stop this!
But the flies did not fear human power. They ignored charms. They beat without mercy. Once again, the Oba called for Ibeto.
Pray to your Olodumare to make those flies go away.
Ibeto prayed and the flies disappeared. But the king hardened his heart again.
I do not take orders from you or from an invisible god.
And so the plagues continued. The lice came, crawling through every corner. Soon after, the kingdom's livestock died, followed by boils on everybody, rich or poor. Pain filled Oguta, but still, Kafurami held firm. Then came hailstones that smashed roofs, followed by locusts that devoured every crop. Then came darkness, thick, unnatural, swallowing Oguta for days. Lamps gave no light, but the Oba clenched his jaw. The people cried out, even chiefs begged,
Let the Beni people go!
But Kafurami snarled,
No! I am God in this land, and no voice shall command me.
The people of Oguta had seen enough. Blood in their pots, frogs in their beds, flies in their mouths, and still their Oba refused to let the Ibeni go. Then came the whisper of the final plague. Olodumare sent word through Ibeto. Because Kafurami has hardened his heart, the firstborn of Oguta shall taste death. From the Oba's house to the poorest hut, no firstborn child shall be spared, except among the Ibeni. Ibeto gathered the elders of the Ibeni under the baobab tree and spoke with a voice not fully his own.
Tonight,
He said,
Olodumare will pass judgment on this land, but those who obey shall be spared.
He instructed every Ibeni household,
Take the blood of a pure lamb, smear it on your doorposts. Do not step outside. Do not open your door, not until morning.
So they did. That night, a strange silence covered the land. Not a bird sang, not even the river gurgled. Mothers held their children close. Fathers stood at their doors, afraid. Then, as the moon reached its peak, it began with a sound, a heavy thunderless pulse, like the beat of 100 ancient drums under the earth. The flames in oil lamps flickered, shadows twisted unnaturally. A chill swept through the land, though no breeze stirred the trees. Cries rose across Oguta like a haunting drumbeat. In one home after another, firstborn sons collapsed without a sound. Strong boys, young warriors, heirs, all lifeless. Inside the palace, Kafurami's only son, Prince Orode, was found cold and still in his bed. The Oba's scream shook the pillars of the palace. He tore his robe, beat his chest, and cried,
Tell Ibeto to take his people and go. Tell them to leave at once.
In the darkness, the Ibeni gathered, quiet but ready, and so, with their children, their bundles, and their hope, they left Oguta that very night, not as slaves, but as a people finally free. The Ibeni marched into the cold night, old men leaning on staffs, women clutching babies, children half asleep but walking. Ibeto led them, his face firm, his staff in hand. Behind them, the torches of Oguta's soldiers began to rise. Kafurami had changed his mind.
Bring them back, he roared. They made me bury my son. They will serve me till their bones break.
With his army of horsemen and chariots, he pursued the Ibeni who were now headed towards the wide, trembling Okun Arugbo, the great sea. The people panicked. Ibeto, they cried. A great river is before us, and death is behind us. But Ibeto stood tall, lifted his staff towards the heavens, and whispered a prayer to Olodumare. Then the river moved. The waters rose high, patting down the middle. Walls of water stood frozen on both sides, and a dry path opened through the heart of the river. A gasp swept through the people.
Go!
Ibeto commanded. They crossed. thousands of feet hitting dry ground where water once flowed. By the time the last Ibeni reached the other side, Kafurami and his army had entered the river path, but as they charged in, the skies rumbled, the waters began to shake. Then, without warning, the walls of water collapsed, crashing down with thunder. Kafurami screamed,
Ibeto, I believe in your Olodumare.
but it was too late, and Kafurami and his army were buried beneath the river, swallowed forever by the very water they thought they could control. And on the other side, Ibeto and Ibeni stood in silence, watching the waters return to calm. Their chains were gone. Their enemy was no more. They had been delivered, not by might, but by the hand of Olodumare. Queen Asioma far away wept, not for the king, but for the soul that was warned many times and still refused to bend. The Ibeni, now free, journeyed on the new lands. Some forgot, some remembered, but Ibeto never did. He would always carry the fire of that mountain, the pain of that night, and the voice that called him by name. If you enjoyed the story and would love to see more interesting stories, please consider subscribing to this channel, not forgetting to turn on the post notification icon so that once another interesting video drops, you will be the first to be notified. You can also check out these videos here. I promise you won't be disappointed. Till we meet again in my next video, remain blessed.